Before his days as a renegade among renegades, Fabius Bile, known more commonly as Clone Lord or Manflayer by those who bear him ill will, of which there are many, or Primogenitor and Benefactor by his children and allies, this notoriously talented individual is responsible for both an enormous amount of discord between the traitor legions, as well as many of their salvations over the years of the Long War. Unfortunately, the exploits of this genius aren't incredibly well known within the wider 40k fanbase, an absolute travesty I plan on correcting in this video. Bile is no typical moustache twirling villain, mind you, though he does enjoy a love for classical music and historic quotations. Even as a young boy within a noble family on Terra, Fabius had an incredible fascination with how the mind and flesh worked. This is thanks largely to a servant of his family's house who would teach him the ways of flesh crafting, using his skills on small animals such as mice. Interesting hobbies children have in the far future. When the flesh tithes on Terra began, Fabius Bile was one of the Terran children to be offered up to serve the fledgling Imperium as its vast armies sallied forth from humanity's cradle world, and therefore was eventually inducted into the 3rd Legion, otherwise known as the Emperor's Children. Fabius would serve with distinction throughout the years of the Great Crusade, working his way into the Legion's command structure, earning the rank of Lieutenant Commander and Chief Apothecary. As a result of his rank and skill, Bile worked closely with his Primarch Fulgrim, as well as other notorious characters such as Lord Commander Eidolon, in the years preceding the heresy, to perfect their understanding of the Emperor's genetic art so they could surgically enhance legionaries, all in the name of perfection. For those Noise Marine fans out there, you can thank Fabius for their creation. It was he who created the original Noise Marines, known then as the Cacophony. During the time of the Horus Heresy, it is well documented that the Emperor's children did not take as detailed a part in the siege of the Imperial Palace as originally planned, as they'd recently devolved into a legion of sadists and hedonists through their devotion to the chaos deity Slanesh. The Emperor's children were content on quenching their desires in the blood and other various matters of the civilian populace, their attentions more suited to satiating their own deprived cravings than adhering to drawn-out deployments. During this time, Bile undertook numerous experiments on Terra's population, further adding to his terrible repository of knowledge. Funnily enough, Fabius Bile never devoted his soul or any aspect of his service to Slanesh, as the majority of his legion did. His fascination has always been with the genetic science and technology used to turn humanity's youth into space marines, and after that, how he could improve upon that template of holy works. Fabius in his own way has held firm to the imperial truth, the ideology spread and propagated by mankind during the Unification Wars and Great Crusade, that there is no such thing as gods and that all mysteries could be explained by science. In Fabius' words, the Chaos Gods are no more than a random confluence of celestial phenomena. Gods are for the weak. Following the traitor legion's defeat and the period of history known as the Scouring, Bile would find refuge among his fellow 3rd Legionnaires in the Eye of Terra. For those who aren't aware, following the traitor legion's defeat at the Siege of Terra and the death of Horus, the surviving traitor legions were driven back, eventually managing to evade Imperial retribution fleets into the Eye of Terra. Once within the Immaterium, the various traitor legions were fractured, with not one of them maintaining the overarching, organised leadership such as they enjoyed whilst fighting on behalf of the Emperor during the Great Crusade. Having lost the strength and unity of cause the heresy had provided, the Sons of Horus quickly became the scapegoat among the survivors of that great war. They blamed Horus and his legion for the failure the siege was. The remaining Sons of Horus were hunted down within the Eye by their erstwhile brothers in arms, almost to extinction, and the 3rd Legion were amongst the most zealous in this bloody campaign. As you can probably appreciate, this is a very hypocritical view to have, given the lackluster performance among some of the traitor legions during the siege, as well as the poor leadership displayed, such as the infighting of their primarchs. During this time called the Legion Wars, Fabius Bile, along with many of the Emperor's children, dwelt upon the world of harmony in Canticle City. It truly was a realm of depravity, the Emperor's children free to quench their every desire without the constraints of morality or honor code. During these original years of banishment within the Eye, Canticle City was one of the largest bases of operations the Third Legion controlled, and was a major asset during the Legion Wars, as the Emperor's children could launch attacks against enemy fleets or strongholds, more efficiently hunting down the remaining sons of Horus, whose numbers were quickly approaching total extinction. From his laboratory beneath Canticle City, Bile would continue on his project to create the perfect Primarch clones. Besides numerous failed attempts, we learn there were at least 2 perfect clones that were created in this time. These are the clones of Horus and of Fulgrim. Horus's clone was part of a plan for the Lupercal to end the Legion Wars, under the control of the Emperor's children, of course. Unfortunately for Bile, when the sons of Horus finally reunite under the leadership of Abaddon, they strike back at those who have been so cruel and unforgiving in their persecution of their Legion brothers. In their vengeance for being hunted over the centuries within the Eye, Abaddon and one of his most prolific lieutenants, Kion, formerly of the Thousand Sons, hurl Kion's previous flagship, a Canticle City, from orbit, destroying it utterly. Many Emperor's children trying to flee or take the fight to the enemy are destroyed by Abaddon's vessel, the Vengeful Spirit. Again, unfortunately for Bile during this battle, his clone of Horus is killed by Abaddon, impaling the clone of his Gene father on his own famous power talon. The clone of Fulgrim was kept intact in an operating vat under the surface of the planet, though at the time of Canticle City's destruction, Fabius believed it destroyed. For the act of attempting to recreate the Primarchs, those who had had the galaxy in their grip yet failed, Abaddon holds a special hatred in his heart for Fabius, and for the wanton destruction caused upon his laboratories and centuries worth of research being erased, Fabius Bile likewise detests the self-proclaimed War Master of Chaos. Following the defeat at Harmony, Fabius flees and takes refuge on the Eldari crone world of Urim. Here he establishes a base of operations and recommits himself to his research for the next few millennia. Apothecaries from various legions such as the World Eaters, Night Lords and Death Guard are drawn to Fabius' holdings on Urim, hoping Bile will take them into his inner circle of students. He takes under his wing quite a number of apothecaries, teaching the worthy many secrets, including the art of reproducing legionaries. Some of these individuals return to their brothers to further increase their warband's numbers or provide their services to the highest bidder, becoming primogenitors for hire. Though Fabius Bile views a lot of these students as useful tools, he also does grow bonds and care about particular individuals that either study under him or work with him in some other form. Often these individuals are gifted with significant potential that Bile finds fascinating, a connection that can potentially lead to a small emotional bond. Fabius makes forays throughout the Eye for raw materials, meeting new friends and making lifelong enemies along the way, as only Fabius can, though he does also venture into real space, as his project to seed the galaxy with his own new men is finally begun. On various Imperial settled worlds, on the outer reaches of the Imperium's territories, Fabius Bile creates families and even colonies of his own new men creations, with the plan for these individuals to eventually inherit the galaxy through their improved and superior qualities compared to the base human race, qualities provided by Fabius through tampering with human DNA. This threat alone is enough to class Fabius Bile as enemy to all races of the Milky Way galaxy, though it is by far not the only threat he poses. There are those within the Emperor's Children Legion, as well as a particular Harlequin troop, who strive to inspire Fabius to step into his old Legion role of Lieutenant Commander. The motivation between these factions is different, some wanting Bile to lead a united Emperor's Children to glory once more, and others, such as the Harlequins, wanting him to ascend to this role to likely avoid an even worse cataclysm befalling their race in the future. Bile is too canny, however. While deep down he does feel the temptation to take up his old mantle and lead his legion to glory, he refuses to be manipulated by others and eventually realizes that to dedicate himself to uniting his fallen brothers would take from him what strength he has left and will rob himself, as well as the galaxy, of the future they all deserve, which is a galaxy populated by his new men. A perfect galaxy. In the most recent Warhammer 40k lore, Fabius is still at his old tricks, pursuing his agenda of supplanting the current humanity with his new men. However, he does become infatuated with side projects as his intellect is vast and easily becomes distracted with new ponderings and curiosities. Fabius is curious of the workings of the Primaris Marines, as you could appreciate. It will be interesting to see whether Games Workshop makes use of this snippet of lore when it comes to tabletop miniatures in the future. He is an interesting character in that he is driven by a creative purpose, though he has no qualm in committing atrocities on his path to genetic revolution. He can be almost relatable in that he forms close connections with his creations and other Marines. These connections display what could perhaps be termed a friendship between Fabius and his colleagues, and at other times his misplaced trust and ambition can leave you feeling almost bad for him. Fabius is a highly driven individual who could, if he wanted, unite an entire traitor legion and pose a very substantial threat to both the factions within the Eye and those races who dwell in real space. But what do you guys think? Have you given much thought to Fabius in the past, or has he more or less been somebody you weren't interested in learning more about? Would you like to see him make more of an appearance within the lore? Perhaps with the 9th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex containing a Creations of Bile sub-faction. This may mean one day we'll get to see more of this old fella in future codexes and novels. I hope so anyway. I hope you've learnt some new facts and lore regarding this often misunderstood character. If you appreciate the lore and storytelling, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it gives the YouTube algorithm the okay to push out this video to more people. As always, I'll see you next time. Take it easy and have a good one.